very shortly.
Cool.
All right. Hi, it's Sir Rithkin from Ontier. I'm here with Duke Thorfinn the Cruel of the West. This is part of my 50 Duke interview series, which is actually going to be more than 50. And I was supposed to fight 50 Dukes this year, but instead I'm interviewing them, and it's been super cool because I've gotten to know a whole bunch of people I would have never met. And you know, Thorfinn just lives a little bit south of me, and I don't think we've ever actually met in person. We were just talking about that. We have lots of mutual friends, but never met in person. So I'm looking forward to talking to him because, you know, I watched that mental thing you and Mark and Felix did.
Yeah.
And your comment about your body being an amusement park cracked my shit up. Like, that was hilarious.
Yeah, well.
I loved it. Anyway. Yeah, that was awesome. So anyway, so we're going to talk to Thorfinn, and we usually start these with sort of your SCA origin story. So if you could sort of tell us where you found it, when you found it, that would be great.
Okay. Well, I think my origin story starts off where all good stories would start anyway. My local comic book store, which was also where you could buy like Dungeons and Dragons books and stuff like that. And it was in Chico, California. So kind of Northern California. And what happened was in like eighth grade, I met this kid named Jay, and he also frequented the same comic book store. We started hanging out, and his older brother and his older brother's like best friend both did SCA, and so we would go in and you know to his room, and we'd play Dungeons and Dragons all the time and stuff like that. And when his brother wasn't around, we would sneak in and grab his SCA armor, his stinky, just disgusting SCA armor. And we'd wear it while we played Dungeons and Dragons. We're like, oh man, when we grow up, we're going to totally do this, right? And well, one day we're in college and we run into some of the guys and we're like, hey, do you guys still do that sword fighting stuff? And they're like, yeah, every Sunday down at the park. And so we just went, and it was like, after that, we were addicted, and we you know, we stayed in, and that both of the guys I was talking about, like his older brother and best friend, both got knighted, and right after that, and then.
So who are they?
It's Sir Fallon Silverhawk, who is from Rivenoak, which is Chico, and Ursus of Ryborg, which is another knight, and the two of them were kind of like, you know, like the older guys. Like when I was in 8th grade, I tried to go to a West Ontario War with them as their page. And something happened, like I had like a note from my parents and everything, and then something happened and the guy couldn't go. And so I didn't get to go. And so that was kind of like, it kind of faded away, you know, when you're in high school, you're doing high school, you know.
That other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then long story short is like, you know, I always loved Norse myths and The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons and crap like that. And so I kind of was drawn to it. And as soon as I put armor on, like for real, put armor on, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a fighter instead of pretending I was a fighter and rolling dice. So
I can fully relate to that.
Yeah, you know, and it's funny because I look back on it now, and I actually significantly after like 15 years into the SCA or 20 years in the SCA, I started playing D&D again with my friends. And we were like, why do we ever stop doing this, right? But it was because I wanted to be a fighter instead of pretend I was a fighter, really, is what it came down to. So
right. And when you're passionate about something, favorite things of your life.
Yeah, apparently I also have a slightly obsessive streak because when I was before I did SCA, I did jiu-jitsu, and I was at the dojo like 4 days a week, right? And as soon as I started kind of transitioning into sword fighting, which was nice because there was girls there, and they didn't have any girls at the dojo. And so it was like sweaty guys in gis. And then I was like 19, and they would all go out to the bars and have beers and stuff, and I had to just go home. And so I started coming to the SCA when I was like 20, and I was like, whoa, there's girls and all this stuff, and it's like kind of, you know, like fantasy world. And so I was addicted. But I would fight like 4 days a week. We were calling people like, hey, you want to go get armor? Let's get an armor right now. You know, all the time. And go ahead.
Oh, how long did it take you to get your own armor together after you found the practice?
Okay, so we banged out some carpet armor pretty quick. And I had like, because there was a guy named Dean McCann in town who owned, he worked for a a carpet cleaning company. And so whenever his company would also get hired to put in new carpet, they would take the old stuff and he would just steal it and give it to new fighters. And so we all had like, really awful. I don't know if you ever fought in carpet armor. Imagine old carpet and then just it's falling apart and it's wicks up sweat like in crazy amounts. And but yeah, so pretty quickly I had managed to cobble together a functional suit. And then I think for my 21st birthday, my mom bought me a helmet from a guy named Robin McKenzie from McKenzie Smith Armory. And in the SCA, he's Robert Kinsler. And it was like my first SCA helmet that I owned. And I loved that helmet. It was like a little Spongen helmet. I thought it was really great. But yeah, so it took me about 3 or 4 weeks to really build something that was legal. And then I kind of over, the next 30 years have been working on my kit. So
there's a lot of truth in that.
Let's be honest. I mean, let's be honest. There's always something you need to either change or you want to do better or about your gear. And so I've got a new helmet on order from Dave at Dongal.
Yes.
And I don't need another damn helmet, but I'm ordering one, right? I guess I do, right? That's the thing. So I guess I need another helmet, guys. So I joke that he's my metal tailor. So
it's funny. So does your mom play, or is she just super supportive?
Oh, my mom? No, my mom doesn't do SCA. She's just kind of, she's a good person.
Well, she bought you a helmet. I don't know if my mom would have ever done that.
My mom, it was one of those things where she's like, if you could have anything for your birthday, what would it be? And I was like, a helmet. She was like, no, I don't know what that really is, but okay. And so that's the way she is. She's a great lady, but she's never even learned my SCA name after 30 years of me. I think she still thinks it's kind of a phase I'm in, like I'm going to quit doing it or something. And so it always cracks me up. But
it's tough being a phase when all your friends are in the organization, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. I mean, I think maybe I'll grow out of this in another 25 years or something. So we'll see.
Maybe.
Maybe.
So, who were your mentors at the beginning?
Okay, so definitely my knight Obadiah the Obstreperous was a huge influence on me. I met him. Like right when my very first event I went to, I met him actually. He was the first knight I ever met, and he actually was really cool because it was a Sinagua cornet, and he took time to sit and talk to this brand new kid. It was raining like crazy. That story is bonkers. I went to this event and 4 guys got into a 4-man dome tent, which is not big enough to hold 4 people. I don't know what those numbers are, but they're not people. And and so it rained like insanely, and also no one told us about you can't touch the inside of the tent, right, or it'll leak. And so we woke up and we were like ass deep in water, like probably 2 inches of water standing in the tent. And all of our clothes, which we had borrowed cast off SCA clothes that were terrible, that like Fallon Silverhawk wouldn't even wear it anymore. That's how bad they were. And so anyways, he gave me a blanket off of his bed, I think out of fear that I was going to die, right? Because it was so cold and rainy. And it was he's like, hey, take this, we'll make a Viking cloak out of it, And it was a wool army blanket. And but I think he was a massive, influence on me in all things, because he kind of became like my dad and like older brother, beer drinking friend, kind of mentor, all rolled into one. And I was like, I'm gonna be this guy's squire, I think. And he was like, I don't want squires. I'm never having squires. I'm like, oh well, shit. Okay, I guess I'll focus on some other people. And then one day he walks up to me at a fighter practice and just goes, hey, come here. And I walk over to him. Yeah. And he's like, do you have an aversion to red? I went, no. And he just throws a belt in my face. That was my squiring ceremony, right? And he said, put that on. I just put it on. I'm like, oh, okay. Followed him around for the next, forever. But so he was fairly big. And then there was a guy named Duke Thorfinn the Cruel, which was really a big influence on me. Sir David of Aragon was a really big. These guys taught me how knights acted,
right?
And that was a really cool thing because they were good examples, of what peer in the SCA does and how they care about things and the club and everybody. So I learned a lot from them, I think. So I'm still learning a lot from them.
You were saying that sometimes you would fight 4 times a week and you just call up your buddies. Was that sort of the origin of the Argent Angels, or is that something else?
No, okay. So what happened was those guys I was talking about were in a group called the Sons of Iniquity.
Okay.
And the Sons of Iniquity were a pretty big deal fighting unit in the West Kingdom, like a big powerhouse kind of household. Okay. And I got lucky because my knight and David of Aragon and Duke Christian and all these guys, Gareth of Crawford, were all members of that group. And I got pulled in pretty early as a squire to be a member. And then eventually that group kind of imploded. Sometimes groups just have a kind of a life cycle. And it ended up that we broke up. And then about like 4 of us got together about 3 or 4 months later, and we said we would like to start a new group, but we were going to change some of the rules and kind of the structure. And it's not just going to be a war unit, and it's going to be more of like kind of a fellowship of like-minded people. And that was the early stages of the Argent Angels. And it was myself, Stephen of Greenwood, Sir Gareth of Crawford, and Sir Wheelock Wilfreding were the first 4 guys to go to those meetings, and then we formulated the Angels out of that. But so yeah. Still going. I don't even know how many years now. Seems like forever.
So I heard a story, and I don't know if it's true, but that the Crapode was something that Obadiah put together to help you.
Yeah.
In tournament. Is that true?
That's absolutely the case. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell the story?
Sure. Yeah. So what happened was he had some, like, his squires we'd go to fighter practice and kick ass, right? We could just beat the hell out of people. But we'd go to tournaments, and all the little kind of minutia of the tournament, like the saluting and the all of the little steps that you go through, kind of threw our game off, right? We hadn't figured out focus and stuff yet. Right. And so what he did was he was like, well, I'm going to do this idea where I'm going to make a tournament that is an exact copy of Crown, right? From everything, from the salutes to the way you do every element of it. So that way these guys are continuously in this environment, right? And we're going to have it every month, and it's going to be the last Thursday of the month. And the reason it was Thursday was we had a practice at Ob's house, and we would all drive down, a bunches of us, like Duke Alden and Sir Helgi Olfson and Sir Vlad the Indifferent from San Diego now, and all these guys would drive there, and we would train with Ob. And so he decided one of those practices would become this tournament. And we originally we didn't know what to call it at first. Everything was always about William Marshall. Every damn thing was named after William Marshall. Like, there was other cool knights, and so we talked about it, and I came up with the idea to name it after Bertrand de Guesclin, which is the Constable of France during the 100 Years' War. Amazing fighter, just a really cool figure in history, and just tough as coffin nails, right? And so we were like, oh, and then we looked it up, and they used to jokingly say he was like the Toad of France. And so we looked up the word in French for toad, and it's le crapaud. So we kind of went with that. But the idea was to get us in a situation where we were in a tournament all the time. And so our brains became, like, all that other stuff just falls away now, right? Because this is a commonplace. And he also added 2 other elements. He said, look, if you're trying to win these tournaments, you're going to have to be able to speak, right? And so what he would do was he would have us do a toast at the beginning, and it was an impromptu, off-the-cuff toast. It could be about anything, right? And then one at the end. So you toast in and you toast out, and then whoever the crapaud is actually hosts the tournament, and they're allowed to repeat victories. That's a major difference between it and the way we run our Crown tournaments, right? Is that they can win. If you're Uther, you can win 13 times in a row. So,
okay. So did he put that into effect when you were still a squire? Was that?
I had just got knighted. Okay. And so I was even as a young knight, I was knighted really young. So I was knighted a week before my 25th birthday. I was 24 when I got knighted, and I started fighting around 21. Okay. So, and it wasn't super serious, like I took like a small break right at the beginning, because I moved away for 6 months and stuff like that. But but so it was like, I was still a pretty young kid, and it was, I could, like I said, I could kick everyone's ass at fighter practice, but I just couldn't. I could go like 5 rounds in the tournament and I just choke. And
Right.
it had changed everything, though. I mean, I've seen it over the years now. It's going on. The 300th Grappo is coming up,
Right.
And it's a creature unto itself now. It's legends about it are all over. It's spread tournaments that are copy tournaments all over the known world.
All over, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that's pretty cool.
It is. It's super cool.
We certainly didn't expect that. It was, I mean, we started in the backyard just like the SCA, right? But it ended up, it's like I said, it's its own thing. It's got a life unto itself, and we still, I run it right now, and so it's in my backyard. And in the near future, it's going to be moving up to Sacramento once the pandemic kind of fades out.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
So let's talk. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm good. I'm just chilling.
Oh, I was going to say, let's talk about sort of your journey as a squire to a knight, and what kind of training you did. You said the 4 practices a week, but was there stuff in addition to that?
Well, no. I mean, I was always going. It was either like I was either at work or going to fighter practice. And so we would. This is like I'll start off when I was a squire. I lived in Chico, and we would Tuesday night we would drive from Chico to Vacaville, which is about an hour and a half each way, maybe 2 hours, every Tuesday night, and then we would fight until 11 o'clock, and then we'd drive home. So we get home around 2, get up in the morning, and then go to work. And then I wasn't getting enough practices, so we started a Wednesday practice in Chico. So I would then on Wednesday we would get together and we'd have Wednesday practice. Then Thursday we'd either drive down to Sagan's place down in Sacramento, or Ob's house. And so when Sagan moved, we switched to just doing Ob's house Thursday night. And then Friday was pack up and go to an event. And so, this is the 90s, there was a pretty good chance there was a war or a tournament every single weekend. And we would then fight Saturday and then usually Sunday. And then you would pack up, go home. Monday was really kind of just for fixing your gear. Making a new sword, because at the time, when you're fighting that much, we were blowing through swords like, I don't know, at least one a month, right? And so you'd make like 3 at a time, and just have them kind of stacked. And then after in your shields, I don't even know how many damn shields I built back then. We had like a system to it. But yeah, so that was kind of the cycle, and I did that for like 3 years straight of that many fighting that many. 3 or 4 days a week at least. And then I slowed down to just like 3 for about 10 years. And then I got to where it was only 2 a week. I would do Tuesday at Mission College when I moved to the Bay Area, and then BART practice, which is one of the oldest practices in the SCA, and it's up in Berkeley, California. And I'd go up there. So I lived kind of in the middle of the two, and I would just drive back and forth. And I did that for forever. And then, nowadays it's really hard. It's hard to find a practice. So I actually started one here at my house. So I run my own practice, and which was actually really new and getting a lot of traction, and then fucking the pandemic, right? So now it's on hold. So
why do you think that is? Why do you think there's been this shift?
Well, for us, I think the hard part was finding sort of like places that would allow us to do it. So for a while we were at this like baseball, like softball field, but they have like 10 softball fields. That's all they do as a business. And there was one of them that they built too close to the road. So they kept hitting the balls into the street and hitting cars. And so they couldn't use that field anymore. So they let us use it for about 2 years. And what happened was that the new management company or something came in, and they were like, no, we don't, you're weird.
Right.
We don't understand. We don't want our insurance affected. You're gone. And so we lost that one. And so BART still goes on pretty hard. And there's like a couple smaller, like almost like private practices down here. I don't know. I think that in the West Kingdom, that's kind of just where it is right now. There's not a lot of people that have the drive to do 3 or 4 practices a week. So
yeah. I mean, we're all getting older, right? And we have more professional jobs where we can't stay up until 1:30 in the morning and then actually function at work or whatever.
Right. That's
true. Okay. So when you got knighted, was it a surprise?
No. It was okay. So this is I got knighted by my knight, actually, by Obadiah. And what happened was the day I was offered, I was captain of the Queen's Guard. And, there was a lot of, people were like sniffing around saying, oh, it's really soon, it's coming soon.
They're very subtle.
Yeah, and which also kind of sucks because
Yes.
then you start to build like expectation, right? And then what if it takes a year, right? And so it just starts to wear on you. And I think a lot of young fighters go through that, right? People do that to, which I think it's not cool. So don't do that.
It's not helpful at all.
Yeah, it's not helpful. So just stop doing it.
Yeah.
Right. So what happened was that day I was the farthest unbelt in the tournament. I went to, I think, semifinals, and it was Ob and Alden, Havek, and myself, I think. And what ended up happening was the king and queen offered me that day, but Ob won crown that day. Right. And it was his first time ever winning. And so it was like the stars kind of aligned thing where I'm like, hey, I think you guys are both really awesome, but I have to let my knight do it. Right. That's no way that ever get to happen. And they were like, well, we understand. And so I was knighted by Obadiah. His first thing he did as king of the West was to knight me. So,
how cool is that?
It was amazing, actually. And I did this whole vigil where I had because at the time I was doing 12th century, so I had all this the pavilion, and I had the cross.
The whole story of your vigil. Tell it.
Oh yeah, okay. So what we did was we went to Rancho Seco, which is a nuclear power plant, has a park, really beautiful park with a lake and everything, and we used to have a lot of events there. And so I set up a pavilion, and I bought all this food and a keg of beer and everything for all my guests. And then I wore a white tunic, and I had these giant pillar candles that I found that were 1.5 feet tall and that big around. And I lit those, and I had the whole cross thing, and I had my belt and my chain and my spurs and stuff like that all laid out on the table. And I just sat there all night, the penitent squire, and all that. And each person would come in, and they would tell me their little bits of advice. And most of them were really good. And then of course you get some of the guys who are like, oh, don't let your chain hang into a girl's, bodice. And you're like, what? But so mostly though, that part was really good. And what happened was at dawn, I went out to the lake, and I went into the ice cold water, and I took my square belt and I scourged my flesh, one strike for each year of my life at that point, and dunked myself in the water. And then I got out, and that was my squiring ceremony. It was pretty cool. A lot of guys in my line have actually done the scourging thing, and and I tell them, you're not going to understand until the first time it hits. And they're like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. This seems crazy, right? I'm like, just wait. And then you can almost see the epiphany, right? They're like, right, okay, I get it. And it's just kind of a weird connection thing, I think.
So you started this tradition in your lineage.
Well, I actually learned it from Gareth Crawford, who was not part of my lineage. He did it, and he was one of the guys I really looked up to, and I was like, well, when I get knighted, I'm going to do it too, right? And when Ob got knighted, it was a surprise knighting. They just walked up and they called him into court and did it right then. That was real common back then. And but so I brought it into our I guess you'd say I brought it into our squiring line. Sir Helgi did it, Sir Colbert did it. Sir Artos has done it. My squire did it when he got knighted. So I guess it's kind of a thing now.
So when you got knighted, did you settle into being a knight right away, or did you kind of have one of those things where you're sort of trying to live up to it?
Well, I think I'm still trying to live up to it. But for sure, I think that I didn't realize, where I was at, and then it took me a little while to realize I wasn't I was a knight now, and that was, you learn that over time. You learn how to recognize your own value and stuff like that. My exemplars, they were really good about showing me how knights acted, and so I could at least, look to them to say oh, this is how a knight should be doing it, and so it was for God's sakes, 5 or 6 years or 10 years even, and I was still kind of thinking I was the bare bar. And then I realized, man, you're past the bar a long time ago, bro. And so I had to reevaluate how I looked at those type of things. And so I really did take a little bit of interest in figuring out where I stood in the world with that kind of a thing, with the bar, the bar of entrance, and realizing that I shouldn't be using myself as the bar.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go through that because you always kind of think of yourself and you're like, well, they should be able to beat me. And then you're like, well, but I've gotten better too, right? And it kind of takes a while to click that, you're not the low level knight or whatever.
Yeah, you're not just barely making it, right? You're substantially, move past that. And we all should be trying to, continue to grow in our prowess, or at least our adventure of being a knight, because it's the path for each person so different. I try to tell people that all the time, is that there's no one knight. You know what I mean? It's every single one of us has a unique experience in the concept of chivalry while we're exploring it. So,
well, yeah, and a lot of people, they think of the path until knighthood, but really, when you get knighted, the path is actually, you can see how much longer the path is, and that's why I always try to tell people, learn how to enjoy your journey, because if you're not enjoying the journey before you get knighted, you are not going to enjoy it after, right?
Yeah, I didn't have that carrot thing. That wasn't the end goal for me, right? And I've seen, a lot of peers when they get the whatever that is, their Pelican Knighting mod, whatever, they kind of don't know what the hell they're doing now, right? And that carrot's been hanging there so long that now they got it, they're like, and sometimes they just fail because of that. I didn't ever have that, right? And so I was trying to be like William Marshall, right? So my goal was impossible. So I knew I was never going to make it. So as I went by them, right, I never cared. And so I trying to live up to the ideal of chivalry versus this, like, wearing a white belt.
So there was no refocusing for you after you got knighted? It was just...
No, I just kept going. I mean, at my squaring thing, we did later on, we did like an official squaring ceremony. And it was like pretty cool. I put a tent up, and he had like these tests for us and stuff. And, there was like a stick of rattan and tape, and he's like, you have to make a sword and bring me your sword. And you have to, all this kind of stuff. We did all that. And we talked about these goals. And my goal was like, I want to be the best sword fighter I can be. Right. And within reason. I'm not going to go crazy like Mark and start running up and down hills, dragging shit everywhere, but
your body's not a temple.
That's right. I gotta have fun with this thing.
Right.
But so that was kind of the deal, is that I set myself as a goal is kind of just a continuously never be able to reach it kind of a thing. And so
that's cool. How long after you got knighted did it take you to win a crown? Or did you win a coronet before?
I won a coronet. Yeah, I won 2 coronets before I won crown. So I won Sinagua coronet about a year after I got knighted, and then I moved to the Bay Area and won Mist coronet. I was the first person to ever win both Sinagua and Mists in the Central Kingdom. We had a princess that had sat both, but no one had ever won both tournaments. That was like, my one, like, I was the first guy to do something in the SCA, so, which is, at that point was really hard to find something that hadn't been done.
Well, right.
Everything else had been done like 10 times, right? But so it was. Those were big tournaments, though. My first Sinagua coronet was like 60 fighters, and so we look back and in the 90s was a giant period of like growth in the SCA, and like it kind of created this unrealistic like bubble, because there were so many people that when it broke and people kind of faded away, we were still way higher than when we started, but it seemed way less now, right? Because we had that weird peak in the middle. There was no internet really, and there was no video, like online gaming. There was all that kind of stuff didn't really exist, and so we were the only game in town. If you were like any kind of nerd, if you liked Star Trek, you came to SCA. If you were Dungeons and Dragons, you came to SCA. If you were fantasy book club guy, you came to SCA. And that was kind of the deal. And now there suddenly was other outlets, I think. And that's kind of what I think happened there, is that there was a lot more resources for people to go and explore and do their very focused hobbies. So,
what were the biggest differences for you from reigning in Sinagua and reigning in the Mist?
Okay, that is a good question. Sinagua is one of the things about Sinagua is that they freaking love their prince and princess. Like they're like superheroes there, and they treat them that way. They treat them like, you know, so well. Like they're just like, oh, your highness, you know. And they're more like, at the time especially, it was more like working day, you know, warriors for the working day type of people. And Sinagua was gritty, you know. And when I moved to the Mists were predominantly people that played kingdom level, right? They were kingdom level people, and so they were more like, you'd come into the room and they'd be like, oh, here's your bow, you know what I mean? And I was like,
It's like afterthought.
what's going on, right? Both were great. I had a really good experience with both of them. And just that, you know, you learn a little bit different. Like the entire Mists ceremonies are basically like the miniature version of the kingdom ones. And Sinagua wanted to be really fiercely kind of independent. And so all of their ceremonies are different. Like the knights in Sinagua didn't swear fealty at the time because they were just assumed to be in fealty to the prince, right? Like that would have been insulting for them to have to do that. Right, and the Mists investiture ceremony is like exactly the crown, but in miniature. So
that's interesting. So there's like a really unique sort of cultural identity over in Sinagua.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it is more geographically remote, right? Like
yeah, it is, and also they're spread out more. Right. I mean, Sinagua's massive. It goes like basically, you know, like the whole Central Valley kind of a thing. And what's that? Yeah, and large sections of Nevada. That's right. I went to a war out in, God, it was so far into Nevada. It was in Elko, and from Chico it was like an 8-hour or 9-hour drive. And it was still, and I was prince there, for God's sakes. I was like, what is going on with this place? It was like, I mean, blasted, scorched earth for 5 hours in that part of Nevada, and then you come into Elko. But yeah, so it's a giant place. There's a lot of like the spatially very spread out, where the Mists is basically the Bay Area, and it's all really tight, and like, you know, you can be 2 streets over and you're in a different, like, you know, shire.
Right.
So that kind of stuff. And like I said, the majority of people in the Mists were very focused on, you know, where they would say things like, well, we do more kingdom level stuff, and so it was kind of where one was, they were just happy to have you there, and the other one was like, oh, you're here.
So we didn't really talk about it, but you're primarily a sword and shield fighter, right?
Yeah, in tournaments. Yeah.
In tournaments.
Yeah.
What type of shield do you use?
I've used several. So I used to fight with a side-strapped heater, and I won both of my cornets and my first crown with a side-strapped heater. And then at this point, what happened was there was what I like to call like the Viking Renaissance that happened here in the West. Dagmar moved down here, and she really started doing really cool, like sharing really cool Viking stuff with us. I had always wanted to be a Viking guy, but there was nobody that did good Viking stuff when I was starting out. It was like blue jeans and like a t-shirt length T-tunic, a heater, a bassinet helmet, but your heater would definitely have like 3 Thor's hammers or something on it. That's how you could tell the guy was a Viking, right? And I was just like, no. And so I ended up doing the 12th century stuff, right? Because there was a lot of really good examples of that here, and my knight did it, and all this kind of stuff. So I got really drawn in that. But then when Dagmar came down, there's kind of like this Viking Renaissance, and I was like, oh snap, I'm going to start dressing like a Viking now. And so I switched my gear, and I ended up having switching to a center grip round shield, which nobody in the West used, right? And nobody even had a freaking idea how to help me with it. I was already a count, and I was like, I don't really know how this shield works, right? And so what I ended up doing was going up and talking to Ulf and Skeggy and those guys, and having them show me how the Ontarians use one. And so I started using the Ontarian style, and then I adapted a little bit over time, changing my stance and everything as I became comfortable with it. I won my second crown with that shield, and then I fought with a center grip round shield for probably 6 years, and then I switched to a kite shield, and I've been fighting with a center grip kite for a while, 10 years or something. So.
Do you switch also to challenge yourself, or is it mostly whatever kind of armor rig you're
That's kind of what it was. Really, I was trying to look more like whatever my time period. Like I was fighting in Mail with my Viking stuff, and then I switched to like the Lamalar. Sir Dimitri, do you know him from the West? Dimitri.
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah, so he was really one of the first guys to work on the Lamalar plates. Him and a couple guys had did the research on it, and they ordered like the original ones that got used like kind of everywhere in the SCA for a long time. And that was Dimitri. And so I ended up getting a suit really early. And for SCA fighting, Lamalar is great because let's be honest, it's easy to fix. It's adjustable. It's just and it's good protection for what we're doing, and looks cool. So for SCA fighting, it's a great armor. I think that's why it blew up so big. It's just easy to maintain and things like that. But so when I switched to the Lamalar look, and I was going more kind of the like Rus or Kievan Rus look, I ended up switching to a kite shield, and so just to look that way.
That's cool. Do you run one of Dave's or Dongle's Rus helms?
Yeah, I have a custom one that he made for me, and it was Rus War God. Is what I told him. I said, make me a Rus War God helmet, and so.
Cool. He makes beautiful Rus helms. I have one too. I just can't quite get it to sit right because it's so top heavy. But
yeah. There's that. So I'm actually switching back. I think I'm going to switch back to a Sinagua round, and I'm going to. That's why I ordered like more of a Viking helmet from him, instead of a Rus style helmet.
All right.
More migration era.
Let's go back to that first crown you won. Did you at some point decide that you were going to? I mean, everybody in the West and Ontario always enters crown. I mean, it's sort of a given. It's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
But at some point, did you decide, hey, I want to be competitive in this crown, and I'm going to go for it?
I was at that point pretty hungry for winning a crown. A lot of my friends had done it. Alden had done it a couple times already, and I was really gunning for it. One of the big things for me though was I was a really early adopter of the low profile thrusting tip, and because before that they were like big, stupid, like big old clunky things, and you couldn't.
They ruined the balance.
Yeah, and they never worked right, and so I didn't like those, and I had switched to it I was working with Uther all the time, and he had picked it up, and so the two of us, were really trying to figure out how to take it from being like to a modern, maybe more modern attack form, because we really didn't know. None of us knew how to adapt it yet, and we were all trying to incorporate it into our styles. But I was very successful. And I remember like no joke, that tournament I'd like salute, and I would tell the guy I have a thrusting tip, and they would go into like a standard guard like this, and I'd stab right in the face, and I'd be like, I told you I had a thrusting tip just now, and the guy'd be like, where did that come from, right?
Well, I guess you know how to use it.
Yeah, well, I'm a spear fighter, right, in wars, and so it just worked for me like a 36-inch spear, same exact technique, right? And I was like, pow, and I just like so many people I killed that day with the thrust, and I was like, you guys aren't even blocking it, right? Or trying, and so that was pretty good. And for a while there, I was, like I said, I was really one of the people that was really pushing the edge on that, and I was I had a huge advantage, I think, for me. And
who'd you fight in the final in your first crown?
Colin McLear, hand and a half sword fighter. He was at the time just crushing everybody. He was getting really far into tournaments, and then he was running into a wall, like he'd hit Fabian or someone like that, Jade, but he was, quite good. And it was a brawl. It was really fun. I don't remember my fights. Okay, so this is when I'm in the zone. I have no recollection of them. And I do know that apparently in the second fight, I stabbed him really hard in the face. And that's how I won. Is that someone told me afterwards, they were like, how did you do that thrust? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Right. And they're like, no, the one at the end. I was like, oh, that's how I won. Oh, cool. And no one was videoing at that point, so I would have loved to have seen it. But yeah, great fight. Very clean, super nice guy.
So I know that you did that mental thing with Mark and Felix, but do you have a way that you get into the zone?
Yeah. So what I do is I originally started off kind of like had to psych myself out because they're my friends. I don't want to hit them with a sword, right? And hurt them. But then I realized they're trying to hurt me. So fuck them. But so what I do now is I come out and I do my salute, right? And then when we're still at distance, I put my arms up in the air like this, and I do like a little thing like that, and I say a phrase which is Barsum, which is Martian for Mars. John Carter of Mars, the books, he always was trying to get back to Mars. And he would hold his arms up and say that Barsum. Everyone thinks I'm doing some like calling out to Odin or something, but really I'm just being a nerd. But it's what it does is it focuses me. Now I'm here.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So, what was the most surprising thing about reigning the first time?
Wow, what was the most surprising thing? I think honestly, having done twice as Prince of Sinagua and the Mists, I didn't understand exactly how much more work it is to be king and queen, and even though it's 2 months less time. I mean, they're knocking on your tent at like 7 a.m. at events.
Right.
And I'd be like, I'm naked, and they're like, no, we need to talk to you right now. I'm like, naked. I'm still naked. Why are you doing this? Or like you go to the bathroom and they're following you to start talking to you through the damn bathroom door, that kind of stuff. And I don't think people understand how much the king and queen of this. There's like meetings on meetings, and business meetings, and signing checks and all kinds of stuff for the kingdom that people don't realize happens. And so it's not like they're just showing up on the day and wearing a pretty outfit. They've done a lot of stuff in the meantime. So I don't think I understood that going in, even though I had been really close to court. It's different when you're there doing it. And so, I mean, I'd served on tons and tons and tons of courts and guards and everything, but until you actually do it, you don't know.
Great. So, what was your favorite part?
Giving out awards. I love to help recognize the populace. I think that, and I take it really seriously, like I'll be funny, and then but during these type of moments, the gravity is important. So I will make sure that I give them the attention that they deserve. Because it may be the only time they get called into court in their whole career. And if you do something like recognize someone in the populace as the crown, you maybe recharge that person for years. Right. And so they, getting them to be happy to be a productive member of the club by just doing something simple as giving them an award. It's not like these awards are sacred. Give them away to people that deserve them. Don't hold out. And so I think that's the thing I like best is being able to, and also lead the armies. I love leading the armies. That's my other favorite thing.
Yeah. So you are quite the war fighter. And what?
That's what I've been told.
Okay. You've won one of those cloaks, right? Like the
I have the hero cloak. Asta Leona as well.
So you've obviously been king at Ontario West, didn't you? You and Ulf reigned together. Yeah.
And me and Skeggy as well.
You and Skeggy as well. So what's it like leading your kingdom at Ontario West?
Well, okay, Ontario West War is the best war. It's the best. I mean, and it's because of the way the two kingdoms love each other, right? And we also we're cut from the same cloth, right? So out of all the kingdoms split off from the West, Ontario is definitely the one that is closest to the West. You know what I mean? In kind of culture, and so going up to West Ontario and being able to fight and lead the armies is it's such a pleasure, right? I'm also in the front leader. I'm not standing in the back. I want the people to know I'm there hazarding myself like them, right? So I want them to see their king in the thick of it. I'm going to be where the worst of the fighting is. That's where I'm going, and so that way they're like inspired by that, or at least they know that I'm out there putting myself out there too. I'm not just asking them to do it, but it is really exciting, and it's really fun. And I got lucky to have two of my really, really close friends be the kings that I went to war against, and it was pretty freaking special. especially the Ulf Bloodfoot War. That one was just across the board one of the best West Frontiers I remember in a very long time. And we did like a funny thing. We said the royal camps were going to be in the same camp. So me and Ulf's tent were right next to each other, right? So you want to find where we're at? We're right here, being buddies, right? And so I mean, I think our tents were maybe 6 feet apart or 8 feet apart, but so cool. It was pretty damn cool. I've done it at Pennsic too, and that's a trip, right? At Pennsic, we formed a giant alliance with basically the entire West Coast. It was Antir, Caid, Atenveldt, Outlands, all of these people all got together because they're pretty small groups that go out there, right? And the big Pennsic kingdoms can kind of shit on you, right? They're like, oh, you only bring 8 or 20, you only bring 8 fighters. Well, we don't care about you, right? But now we had 50 because each one of us brought our 10 fighters, right? And now they had to kind of treat us like with respect and make us, recognize us as a contributing part of the army. And so we did that for a few years, this Western Alliance thing. And I think it really is good for us at those big wars to do that. And I'll also let you know, I believe 100% that Antir and the West, excluding West Antir, should never fight against each other. I think that we should make a permanent thing where we're on the same team forever.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it just does.
Yeah, it feels right.
Well, one of the worst things about, making the whole trek out to Pennsic or Estrella is the bigger kingdom saying, oh, you're the reserves. And so you spend all day fighting pickups in the backfield because they never send us in.
I know. That's exactly. That's why I've been to Pennsic like 5 or 6 times when I finally reigned at Pennsic, and I was like, this is not going to happen now. No. So, I spent a lot of time calling all those people and trying to get ahead of time, like, hey, we should really do this thing, and putting some groundwork into it. And it worked out to be a pretty good deal for all of the kingdoms involved. They got, used properly. They got to, actually be effective on the field. And it was pretty cool.
So how much time was between your first reign and your second reign?
My first and second, about 2. No, it wasn't 5 years. No, it was like 2 years or something. And then I took like 4 or 5 years off, and I didn't fight in crowns at all. And then I came back and I won 2 in a row back to back, which was, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. There was like, I think it came down to where there was like 5 weeks in an entire year where I wasn't royalty. And I'm like, that is a terrible idea. It was just too much work, and I got very lucky that I had great, heirs as well as, helping out the courts and everything. But I do not recommend back-to-back reigns. I would say give yourself some time between.
Once you became a duke, do you feel like that you have a different role as a duke than you do as a knight?
I suppose. I mean, the people, they look to you a lot differently, I think. I don't really. I mean, I don't really. I think the only thing I have with strawberry leaves on it is my strawberries in the garden. But I do feel that, I mean, I try to be a good example for everybody. And, also I believe you can have fun too. So I think that that's part of the SCA, is that you can be serious and be a good reenactor, and also have fun. I bet you the medieval guys like to have fun.
No, I agree. I think sometimes we forget that the fun is the best part. And there isn't any reason why we can't do cool things and have fun.
Right. You can have a spot on costume and have fun in it.
Right.
But
I have to ask you, why are you not big on are you just like, your word fame is enough? And
that's kind of my thing, is I've always kind of went with that. Like, that's a very Norse thing, right?
Yes.
You want your word fame. And so, I mean, I've got that. And so I don't need to, have like really ostentatious displays. And it's also, in my time period, they really wouldn't have done that, and so it's not like a thing. So I don't really worry about it. If I was to do like 14th century again, I would probably use more like, that kind of symbology in my heraldry and things like that, because much more of a heraldic like display culture, and I just like, I don't really do that in the Norse culture thing. So
you're not one of those people that sort of SDA-ism into your culture kind of thing.
Not too much. I mean, I kind of like, I have like a lot of costumes, right? So I have like a 12th century, 14th century, 15th century, and I try to make as good as I can in those different costumes. But my main focus is definitely migration era stuff. And so that's kind of what I'm into.
Cool. What was your most favorite thing you did as king?
I think, let me think. Anyway, West Ontario with Ulf was definitely the highlight of problem in my whole career. But like knighting, there was one knighting in particular that was just magical. It was so perfect. This guy Sir Myrick, he did this thing where he had his kid could be his shield bearer and all that. It was beautiful, right? And I got really lucky to be involved in that. That was really, really special. Also, I think one of the things I really enjoyed was I had to go to a board of directors meeting to defend one of my populace that they were trying to kick out of the SCA, and I went there, in a suit and tie, the whole deal, right? Different set of armor, right? Because that's what the armor that they expected, right. And I got to go to bat for one of my people, and I think that was also pretty damn cool.
That is pretty cool.
I won, by the way.
Did you win?
Yeah.
I figured you probably won if it was a good experience.
Yeah, well, that's true.
What's your favorite Western tradition?
Favorite Western tradition? Well, they were just talking about this last night. I think probably, and it's the Tournament of the Roses is really cool. I think that we do here, which is, it's kind of like an add-on to our Crown tournament. So it starts around 4th round usually, and people go out and they do pickup fighting, and you can do it for one fight for a rose, but most people do it best 2 out of 3. You get to fight a bunch of people, and then whoever wins, they have the other fighter go and deliver a rose to whoever they want, and they get it from the queen and the princesses and ladies of the court. It's really cool. I think it's a really nice way for everyone to be involved in the tournament, and I think it's key that you don't want to be like the guy that gets knocked out and then you're out for the day, right? This is we allow a space for them to explore fighting and chivalry still, and I think that that's a really cool tradition. The West Kingdom is just nothing but a tradition, so just tradition. We have a lot of, but I really like the tradition that the Crapos turned into. I think is really cool too. So those type of things.
Did you institute any awards during any of your reigns?
No. I've never. Normally what I end up doing is like I'm the guy who goes in and cleans up the law books. Okay. Like I go in and I work with the seneschal and stuff to get the laws all cleaned out, because what ends up happening is there's awards that are made and then they go away or they close an order, but for some reason in the kingdom law there's like these little like vestigial leftovers of these things, and I end up like multiple times during my reigns I've gone in and like ended up being the guy who goes in and fixes that part. Like not exciting at all, but
is that coincidence or is that kind of your thing?
It's just kind of coincidence. Yeah. Okay. It just needed to be done both the last 2 times, right? And so you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess if I'm doing something like that, that's fine.
So how many squires have you had and how many of them have been knighted?
See, I've had about 5 squires and maybe 6, but most of them just kind of quit the SCA. During the 90s I had a couple squires, and one went off to become a swing dancer.
Oh, cool.
And then one just moved away and stuff like that. I've only had 2 that got knighted, and one of them was actually like a surrogate squire. So he was a squire to a knight who kind of quit the SCA, and he asked if I would work with him to help him get knighted, and it was really fast. He was almost there, and I knew that. I was like, I'm just really here to guide you in, right? Be more of a spokesman for you than actually anything else. Like an advocate is all I really was for him. And then Sir Yannick is my squire that I worked with the most, and I worked with him from like the very first fighter practice all the way through his getting knighted. And so I'm really proud of him. He's a great kid.
That's cool. So we've almost been going an hour, so why don't we look at your sword?
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah. So my swords are traditionally what I'm going to do is I take this one's all beat up Pell sword now. My handles aren't really that interesting. I used to do a lot of like finger grooves and all this kind of stuff, and then I over time realized that most of that didn't really do anything. I try to taper them like a real sword handle, and then I will sometimes put in a slight thumb groove, right? Because I hold it like a loose, like this type of a grip, right? Yeah. And so it allows me to have that kind of extra little leverage there. But I don't use a trigger or anything like that. I have a cord, which is like wrapped around my hand like it's traditional lanyard, and I use. I do right now have a plastic basket hilt. I'm looking for a different brand. I think
we're all looking for a different brand right now.
Yeah, but I ended up having a ton of those, and so as they break, I'm not renewing. You know what I mean? So I just or if I can give away to another fighter, like here, you take them. I talked to Duke Hansa about a company that has this really nice low-profile spring steel one, and I'm going to order one of those and try that out. Cool. I'll let you know how it goes.
Excellent.
But it looks really slick, and it's like I said, really nice and low profile, which I kind of like. I usually shave the sides down to it so it's 1.25 inches, and then I use strapping tape, which I do like all the way up and down, and then I crisscross for about the last foot, towards the tip, to give a little extra strength with a thrusting tip. They're about 36 inches long, sometimes 37 with the thrusting tip. It depends on what I'm doing at that time. And then the way I keep my basket hilts on is I take the strapping tape, stretch it out, spin it like a rope, and around and around and around, which I learned that from my knight when I was a squire, and it changed everything. Because
it works so much better than hose clamps.
Oh my God, those hose clamps only break in tournaments.
Great.
Right? And they never break in practice.
No.
Only break in tournaments, and now you're like running around trying to find another one, right? Or who's got a screwdriver? When you do it the strapping tape rope thing, you have to cut that off at the end, and it's going to be it's a battle to get it off. So that's kind of how I do it. Like I said, I like them to be a little shaved down because I don't. I like them to be meaty, but not too heavy.
Do you have any tricks to keep your low profile thrusting tip on?
Yeah. So what I do is I have a webbing, like a thin webbing that goes down, and each side of the webbing gets taped on first, and then you do it, and then it's crisscrossed around it. A friend of mine, Sir Jeffrey Scott, made these little punches. It's like a pipe that has a ground edge. That's the exact size of a thrusting tip. And so all you do with the foam is just take it and go, and it just it stacks them up inside of it, pop them out, and then tape them on. Awesome.
So is there anything that you would like to talk about that I haven't asked you about?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't have any like a
story that you're just dying to get out.
No,
No.
I don't think so. But I mean, if you run into me guys at an event, come up to me and I'll probably tell you a story. That's what I do. So.
All right. So then we're going to hit the final 10 questions.
Okay.
If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
If I could fight anyone in the world, I'd fight William Shatner. No, it would be definitely Abraham Lincoln. I'd love to fight Radnor right now. He's a great fight. I'd love to fight Ob again. Other than that, I mean, I think the other people I actually fight regularly. So I mean, other people I don't get to fight, I would love to fight Radnor again, and that would be a fun fight. He's always a good fight.
Who would you like to see reign in your kingdom?
Who would I like to see reign in my kingdom? I think I would love to see Sir Robert of Woodsend reign. He's just such a great knight, and him and his lady would do an amazing job. They would just kill it. And so they got close several times, and the Jade, the Viscount Punisher, knocked him out. So
is he the guy that everybody always says is like the pinnacle of chivalry?
Yeah, Robert of Woodsend.
Yeah,
I would think he's definitely one of those people.
Okay.
No, in the West Kingdom for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I talk to someone in the West, I think that's who they always bring up.
Yeah, he's great. So,
Um,
and like I said, he would do a great job.
yeah. If you could talk stick with anyone in the world for an hour, who would it be?
You know, I really do enjoy talking about sword fighting with Mark. And it's funny because we are very different people, but a lot of what we do fighting wise is the same. And so it is interesting to see how we approach fighting from two way different angles, but are doing a lot of the same stuff. We're both very heavy movement and footwork control fighters, like, engaging the tempo, changing and controlling all the tempo and range and all those things. That's kind of what I do. So,
And he's so passionate about his art too.
he really is. Yeah, it's fun. It is fun to talk to him. I got to referee a chivalry discussion between him and Radnor at this brewery one time, and
Oh my goodness.
it was great because Mark doesn't drink beer, and Radnor's like, Radnor only goes to places like where he can sit and have a beer and have like hold court kind of a thing, and like he never comes to you. You always have to go to Radnor. And so we went up to Berkeley and hung out for like hours, and I got to kind of referee their discussion. It was really fun, but he is very passionate, pretty smart guy.
Yeah. What is your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
I think I really like the extended version of Kingdom of Heaven. I think that's quite good, especially the beginning part with Liam Neeson. I think I love that part. I have to say Knight's Tale, right? Who doesn't freaking love that movie? It's weird and it's so off in many ways, but some ways it's so intrinsically the SCA that it's hard to not love it. I think the SCA, if we could blast speakers, would play Queen.
Oh, they would.
I mean, for sure, right? So I oftentimes have a soundtrack going in my head anyway at tournaments, so I think that it's a lot. Those are fun. I love Lord of the Rings movies, stuff like that.
Cool. If you could add a rule to the rules of the list, what would it be?
I would not want to add anything. I would probably just take things away. Like I don't. I think that we should just stick to the idea that you have to wear the minimum, and we're not saying it for safety reasons or whatever. These are the required minimums of armor, and that's it. You can wear more, but I think that there's all these wacky. Everyone wants to pee on these things and make it their own. Every freaking Earl Marshal wants to change some rule that you can't wear tennis shoes or you can't. Relax. You don't have to make a mark on every single thing. And so
I think when you try to make those into rules, you can't enforce them the way that you intend. And really what you want to do is lead by example and inspire people.
Yeah. And also, let's be honest, when we started out, you were wearing hiking boots or whatever because that's what you had.
Right.
And I don't think we should shit on people for being the new guy, right? Or having, it's a growth process, right? Not everyone starts off top to bottom perfect, and I think that we should be okay with kind of supporting them as they go forward. Just like you said, lead by example. Show them, hey, check out these cool Viking fighting shoes I got, right?
Right. And when you can afford to buy $70 shoes, then
exactly. A special set of weird shoes you only wear at events.
Right.
Not everyone can do that, right? So we shouldn't shit on people for that.
What is your favorite tournament format?
I like the double elimination tournament, although I'm very fond of Ontier's Sweet 16 style thing. I think that's really cool as well. I think just the standard Western one for me is I'm so used to it. I've seen there's those Atlantean speed tourneys where you just basically fold the line in on itself every time, and those are cool if you want to get through a tournament really fast. But I don't think that's really leads to any kind of cool display.
Right.
You know what I mean? I do like the idea that in the West, you get to see the two fighters, out there on the field, and their banners are up there, and it's romantic. It's
right. It has ambiance.
Yeah, it's cool looking, right?
Yeah.
So,
what's your favorite event?
Favorite event, West Frontier War. That's by far. I love that war. It's it was really killed me that we couldn't go.
Yeah.
It's so many things this year have been canceled. That were SCA kind of milestones for me, Yeah, and it's made it so that was one of the things that I always look forward to, and I lost that too, and I'm sure everyone did. I'm not saying just me,
Right.
but it's that one stung. That one stung a bit, and so I do miss my friends and Ontier and that beautiful, beautiful site and just the trees and everything. That's really a pretty special place.
Those of you that have never been to West Ontier, and you're looking for a nice little ward to visit to, you should go, because it is the most perfect temperature.
Oh, yeah.
It's right next to the ocean. We get the breeze all day. I don't think it ever gets over 75.
No, exactly. It's like it's July and it's a mile from the ocean.
July
It's like 70 degrees, and it's in a valley that's surrounded by these old trees, and all you can see is no modern anything. It's just beautiful trees and SCA tents, and the fighting is really fun. It's fierce, but it's kind. Like everyone trusts each other. It's a really good environment.
Yeah, it's on a river with a couple swimming holes.
Yeah.
There's some tournaments. It has good merchants. I mean, there's just a lot of really good things about it. Anyway, if you could have I'm asking you about helmets and you already have one in order, but if you could have any helmet regardless of cost, what kind would it be?
If I could have any helmet regardless of cost, I would probably go and get an Ugo and Vryn helmet, because they're just bonkers, right? I just think that, like, if I just said, make me like the craziest freaking helmet, those two guys could make like something that would just be so beautiful. It'd be just insane, right?
Yeah.
And without, imagine if no cost too, right? So I could really, that would be amazing. I would love to do that. I think that the one I'm getting from Dongal is a really, really freaking cool helmet, though. It's I'll post a picture when I get it.
Definitely.
So
Definitely.
it's like I said, a little more Norse than my current one, which is like a more pointed roost style, and that one. But
it's Saturday morning at Estrella, and several people want to talk to you about last night. What did you do?
Way too much. I probably was up late telling stories and singing songs with Ulf, and probably got a little bit drunk and was running amok. Nothing too bad, though. I don't really, if you come to my camp, don't be surprised that I tell kind of a story that's going to have some colorful phrasing in it. So.
Well, you are Obsquire, right?
Oh yeah, God, I know every one of those songs. Everyone. It was like a requirement.
Who is your favorite fight ever?
Favorite fight ever? Man, probably Brand. You ever fight that guy?
Yes. I've been on the end of that glaive.
He's a blast to fight. I remember one time we were fighting in a Beltane tournament, which is usually right around my birthday and also my 90th anniversary, right? And we're fighting in this tournament, and me and him just hammer and tongs, right? And I finally hit him, and it break the freaking handle off my sword, right? As I hit him, and I remember I stood up and I just went, ah! And I just threw my basket all on the ground, and he was laughing. And it was so epic. It was such a great fight. But I mean, I've never had a bad fight with him ever. And he's so good with everything. He's a freaking killing machine. I love that guy.
And then the bonus question is, who's the cleanest fighter in your kingdom?
Cleanest fighter in my kingdom. Again, I'm gonna have to go with Robert of Woodsend. I think it's a tough question, because, to be honest with you, everyone's pretty good here. I mean, there's like everyone's on a scale, right? But I think that he is a very fair fighter, very thoughtful, and he is a very, very good example for, like, calibration and power and everything. So he wears, and also just an inspiration on his kit, what he fights in is like he's head to toe like 14th century. Right. When he was the Earl Marshal, he fought in exactly what the SCA standard is, like the hardened leather with mail and a conical helmet with a nasal and a drape, because he wanted to be able to say, I'm wearing exactly what the standard is. And he's that kind of a guy. He's a very good knight, and I think that we've all learned a lot from him.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for taking the time tonight to talk to me, and it's been super fun and interesting. And
well, I had a blast. Thank you for having me on. I like your show, and I can't wait to see who's next.
Yeah, I think I'm having Duke Tiernan on tomorrow.
Oh
He's
yeah,
from
okay.
My Kingdom, and he's pretty cool too. He's another one of those armor kit geeks. So we'll probably talk about armor quite a bit.
Yeah, I like him. He's a good guy.
He's a good guy. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thanks
Good night,
again.
everyone.
I really
Safe out
appreciate your
there.
time. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.